through manuals, getting my 12-volt refrigerator hooked up and trying to find the manual. Ah, there it is. Trying to find the manual to it. We got like a bunch. Crazy how much stuff you pick up putting in a bus. So just got the refrigerator hooked up, and I wanted to show you a little bit of what I did and what I've learned in the process of getting a 12-volt refrigerator connected. Specs call for no more than 13 feet of 12-gauge wire, so I was kind of worried because I bought high quality Anchor 12-gauge tinned copper wire stranded, and it'll carry it up to 57 feet. So at like 600 volts, I'm only pushing 12.8, and I've actually got my gauge on it and my meter, and I still got like 12.7, so I've got like a 0.3% voltage drop, which is not bad. But just want to make sure I'm safe, because if I got to rewire this thing, it's going to be a little bit difficult, because I've got to go either under the bus or not really wanting to go through the ceiling to get back over to the other side, because I've got all of my electrical on the driver's side and the refrigerator is on the passenger side. So anyway, let's get into this. I'm going to show you a little bit of something wrong. I'm going to walk you through real quick. We've done right much stuff, and I've got a mess in here as usual, because I really have no garage or anything to store stuff in, so it's kind of the same story. I've got things I'm working on everywhere, trying to get some cabinets built, but in the process of building cabinets, you've got to stop and run electrical, plumbing, you know, all that sort of things. You got to hook that stuff up as you're going, kind of in phases. So what we'll get going on right now is I have started building my futon sofa, which you can see that it is covered with tools, but this does slide out. I've got the legs with some little screw down feet, and I've got to make some adjustments to that, and I'm going to trim it out and make it look real pretty. And this little thing here is going to be a drawer, because we wanted to put a little electric fireplace that's actually will do both. It'll heat and it'll just be pretty. So we wanted to have something kind of look like home in here. But in the process, we've got our dinette table in. I've got it mounted, but I had to put some old moving blanket over it to keep it protected, because I don't want my stuff tore up, and you can see what a mess I've got over here. So here's the fridge. This is the culprit that's giving me a little bit of trouble, and it took me pretty much all day yesterday to get the cabinet made to go around it. But the fridge itself, it is a 12-volt fridge from RecPro, and I'm feeling the side of it here because it's pretty warm, and it said it does get warm, and you've also got to leave a 1-inch gap around it. But you can hear it humming, and she lights up and it's cooling, but I'm not going to leave it on. I'm just kind of testing it for today. And then the fridge, the freezer, getting ice cold. I mean, it's nice and cold in there. And I just ordered the lock mechanism, which will actually bolt into these two screw holes here, and then it's got like a lock that'll flip out and come around and hold the door shut. So you can see I started doing my toe kicks. I've now got my radiator heater working, and I had to put 2 new fans on it, and I ended up wiring it to a separate switch because I don't know, something in the old wiring, it would not kick on. I don't know if it was hooked into some kind of a thermostat control, but it would not kick on at all. You can see I've now hooked up my Shore water service for the city water and my gravity feed tube here. This is the gravity feed, and this is the vent, and these are check valves, and this is so when you're pressurizing, the pump pressurizes water from the tank, it doesn't try to feed in the wrong direction. Everything flows, this way to the water heater, eventually to the sink, and then it's going to come through close to the floor and run around and snake around, and then go to the shower, which would be back over here, and then the toilet is back in here. So anyway, we've got some walls done. I've got my lights working. You can see there's still a lot to do. It's a little muggy today. We've had some rain coming in. And yesterday, like I said, I worked on a cabinet, and this is what I've been working on. Look what a mess of wires. So what I've got here is a 12 gauge DC wires to run, and you've got to have the ground coming off the power source, and then the ground, which I do to the frame, which I've got in a ground block over here, a little black box that I run. And I actually ran out of green wire, so I've had to label my ground wire with some black tape. I don't feel like trying to switch all that out later. And these are the switches that I've now hooked in. I've got two here. This one's running the fridge and it lights up, and then this one runs a fan. And the little fan that you've seen before, this is blowing in to help pull cool air from this side, which would be kind of under the bunk, bring some cool air in and circulate some cool air up in behind the fridge. Now, like I said, this calls for an inch gap around it, but I've got an inch and a half here that is going to be a standoff against here, and the back side actually creates its own gap just because the contour of the bus curves and things. And then that was what I started making yesterday, was getting this cabinet in, you know, which will end up fitting in above the fridge. So the fridge will sit nicely back in there, and I've had it back in there, made sure it fit, and then I contoured it and scribed it to the ceiling. Now I've got to patch my little crack here, try to cut that perfect, a little crack right there. I got a little bit off, not much, and then I got to patch up little staple holes because I stapled, glued and stapled all the stuff. But my cure solution, what you're going to call it, to help and make these cabinets strong and so they're not supported by the ceiling, is I've got a 4-inch, or I think it's a 4.5-inch angle bracket, and that's to help support the weight of it. So right now I'm going to cut the fridge off, cut all this stuff off, and I'm going to get all these wires straightened up. You can see some of these, like for the fan, I've already kind of zip tied it, and I'm going to tie it back to the wall. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm tangled up in my cords here. So I got a mess trying to get straightened up today. And actually this morning, let me get turned around here. This morning I was checking because it's been very rainy and cloudy, and I wanted to see what kind of power draw the fridge had, you know, with it being cloudy. And with the Victron system, it was telling me that I still had like 21 hours worth of battery life, but I had minimal wattage coming in off of the panels. And I've got mine set up on 2 different strings, and I can show you here. This is my disconnect that comes in. It's actually a breaker disconnect, so I can cut my panels off and on. You see this number in here, if I can get it in here without the glare. But you've cut these off and on, and you'll see the voltage drop. I need to figure out why in the world. So here we go. So now I'm down to negative 81. So that's pulling off the battery. When I cut it back on, I start getting some positive now. I'm showing, you know, plus 17. So I'm still charging my battery, and you can see I've got lights and everything on. Trying to keep stuff charged. But the sun has started kind of peeking out, not a whole lot. But I've still got some, you know, without the fridge running, I've definitely got positive power coming in and not a drain. So basically everything's just running straight off of the solar panels, and not really having to pull anything off the battery. Now you can watch this. Let's see if I can get this in here again. When I cut the fridge on, it's going to drop, because the fridge has got about 90 watts of pull on it. It hadn't kicked on yet. Waiting on it. There it goes. So it just clicked on. Let's see. You can see the drop. So I love this Victron setup with the battery monitoring system, so you can really tell what kind of draw you're getting on your system, and kind of, I guess, basically budget your electrical usage so you don't run out of power. So let me cut this back off. And as you can see, I got a little bit of a mess. I just wanted to show you guys, I've got pretty much more done. We've hooked up fans and lights and started plugging in my receptacles to the 120 circuit. But really am getting some progress finally. And if I can get this fridge mounted in here and get some of this stuff out of my way, I'll be able to finish building the kitchen cabinets, and then I want to build the bunk and start on all the trim work. And let's step back here. So here's where my shower is, which now I've got my PEX A pipe in here for right now. And I actually do have a light in here too. So that's to light up the shower so you can see all your parts when you're washing. Then the toilet will be over here, which it's not going to sit right there where it's at. We got lights in here also, and then the vanity cabinet is going to go against this wall. So the cabinet will sit in here with the sink, and then you'll have a mirror. We've got a pretty kind of a porthole looking mirror we're going to put in right there. And then here is an expensive item. There's two of the rear tires. I got to get my other two. I've already got the front two steer tires. They're outside under a tarp. And looky here, Mr. Stinkbug trying to get in here. I'm gonna have to evict him pretty quick. I don't want them things getting in here. So this is just a little quick rundown. Kind of get y'all kind of caught up a little bit and show you some of the progress. That's the hole, and I've got to put a filter over that just to make sure that it doesn't suck any kind of dust or stuff up into my fan. But it's come along. Nothing's really changed on the outside. I mean, we've got our awning on and all that kind of stuff. But I do have an issue that I want to talk about. Actually, I need to backtrack, because part of the reason I was worried about the voltage drop on this fridge is I wasn't going to hook a switch up to it. I was just going to hook it directly to the fuse panel. And I got to thinking, well, we probably need a disconnect for it closer to the fridge. So I had to come up with the idea of mounting those little small switches into the trim. And then that way, you know, we can, if we are parking the bus for the weekend or whatever, we're not going to be using it, then I can just flip it off and I don't have to worry about trying to unplug a fuse. Because if I didn't, I had to go in there and pull the fuse to it. So I didn't want to do that. So I hooked up, that's why I ended up hooking up the switch to it, and it ended up with more wire, more than what I had planned by about 8 feet. And I was kind of concerned about voltage drop. So here she is. She's still, it's getting kind of dirty. I need to wash it. We've had rain and pollen. Springtime is here, so we're getting a mess of pollen, especially coming out of this big tree right here. That thing is like shedding these little seeds and stuff. It's getting all over it. I need to clean all that up. It's getting nasty looking. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about real quick. So I mounted my mini split on a metal rack, which I welded all the tubing together, you know, cleaned it up, prepped it, sanded it, painted it, and got all that done. Well, I'm ending up with some rust on the bolts, and it was dripping down onto the back of the bus. I don't know, you can kind of see if it's a little bit of staining in here. I scrubbed the heck out of it trying to get it clean. So what I ended up doing was, I guess, you know, where you drill through the hole, drill the hole through the steel, you know, then it takes off the paint. And I tried to spray paint back down in there as I was, you know, putting all this stuff and mounting it back together. But evidently water is getting into the tubing, and so I think the only other option I could recommend was I should have did angle iron to where you don't have the chance for water to get into the actual inside of the tubing. The tubing is very strong, the square tubing, but if water gets in it, then it ends up, and if you know water, it finds a way. So I'm working on that, trying to get that sealed up. My fix to that is I've been taking right now, just to keep it from getting worse, is I'm taking some of the Dicor roof sealant and I put in around the bolt holes and then set the bolts back down in there, trying to kind of seal that off for now. Of course, I was trying to fool with it this morning, and then the rain coming in, so I'm having to kind of switch gears a little bit and working on some inside stuff. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you're getting a little bit of information off of something of my mistakes, and you won't make the same mistakes. And trying to hold my camera here, but this was the first time for us, and it's definitely a learning experience, and so learning things as I go and getting better. But we'll catch y'all next time. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch y'all later.